For me, everything in pottery begins long before I even sit at the wheel. It starts with clay preparation, especially wedging. Over time, I have come to realize that if the clay is not properly prepared, then everything that follows becomes harder than it needs to be. So I have learned to give that stage my fullest attention. There are times when I dedicate a whole session, usually at the beginning of the week or sometimes during the weekend, just to prepare my clay in advance. I wedge enough clay for the entire week's work at once. It may seem like a simple routine, but for me, it sets the tone for everything that follows in the studio. Once I am done, I wrap each of them carefully, making sure the moisture is preserved and the clay remains consistent and ready for use whenever I need it. What I have found is that this habit doesn't just save time, it also gives me clarity on what to use them for. When I enter the studio later in the week, I am not worrying about preparation. I can simply focus on creating. There's something very grounding about knowing that the foundation is already taken care of. Among all the wedging methods, I mostly use the spiral wedging technique. Over time, it has become more than just a method. It feels like a rhythm I have grown used to. The spiral motion allows me to align the clay particles gradually while removing air pockets efficiently. It requires steady hand, a bit of patience, and a consistent movement that almost becomes meditative with repetition. There is something very intentional about it. As the clay rotates and folds under pressure, you begin to feel its texture change. You notice when it becomes smoother, more unified, and more responsive. It is in those small changes that you begin to understand the material more deeply, not just as clay, but as something alive in its behavior. I have also realized that preparing clay in bulk like this teaches discipline. It removes the temptation to rush into making without preparation. Instead, it builds a structure around my practice. It creates order in what can sometimes be a very unpredictable creative process. And honestly, I have learned that pottery is not just about what happens on the wheel or in the studio. A lot of the quality of final piece is already determined in the early, quiet stages, just like clay wedging, where no one is watching, when it's just you and the clay being prepared slowly and carefully. So when I come back later in the week and sit at the wheel, I feel ready, not because I'm rushing into making something, but because I have done the quiet work that supports everything else. And in many ways, that's what keeps my practice steady. The consistency of preparation, the patience of waging, and the respect for the process all come together before a single form is created.